Thank you for joining us for this look at the best original reporting from KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Coming up, the cost of childcare. From the price parents pay to the struggle for providers to stay in business, we have Claire Trageser's two-part special report. And transforming Terminal 1. See the major work happening at San Diego International Airport and what it means for access starting this weekend. And securing East County's water, the new treatment plant that will boost the local supply. And we start with gas prices back on the rise. This week we saw new record highs of more than $6 per gallon. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado says those in need of help are wondering how long they can wait.
Berta and Santiago Soto are unloading their farm-grown produce at the new farmers market in Linda Vista. But their minds are preoccupied with the high cost of traveling to farmers markets from their farm in Fallbrook.
Muchísimo.
Gas prices have had a tremendous impact on the cost of operations of our small family farm. We've had to increase prices, but we can't increase them so much because then we won't sell anything. But sometimes we can't even cover the cost of gas.
They're far away from Sacramento, but what is done there will affect them. Right now, politicians are trying to figure out what to do with a nearly $90 billion budget surplus and the budget in general. Berta and Santiago hope it includes relief for higher gas prices at the pump that are seeping their way into everything they do and will affect the future of their farm.
We often think about closing the farm. We work so hard and it's all for nothing sometimes. We just can't make a profit.
And it's really sad to see. I know people are pinching pennies.
San Diego Council member Raul Campillo says his office has been flooded with emails and calls from his constituents who want something to be done about inflation.
And they want to know what sort of subsidy can they get, what's the plan at the state, what are the governor and the legislature thinking about doing, because it really is making families stretch even more thinly.
The legislative proposal for the nearly $240 billion budget includes an $8 billion relief fund for Californians struggling with higher gas prices and inflation. This will include $200 refunds per taxpayer and dependent.
What I really want to see is something happen sooner rather than later. I think the governor and the legislature need to negotiate a more quick solution to the problem.
Berta has a message for Sacramento, too.
Pues sí, que nos ayuden más.
Yes, please help us more because we just can't make it. Not like this.
The budget deadline is June 15th. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
The cost of just about everything is being touched by inflation, and that includes the important work of watching our kids. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Trageser has a detailed look at how providers and families are struggling.
Carolina Festo walks over the cracked concrete outside her home in San Diego's City Heights neighborhood and envisions something entirely different, a play space for kids.
So I want to put to put is very difficult, and I want to put the better one. That way the kids can be safe. And as you can see, I need a lot of work, but I cannot afford it. I don't have money to do that.
Festo is a refugee from Burundi who used to run a home childcare with 12 kids. When COVID started, she had to close. All her clients were refugees who worked in hotel housekeeping, and they were laid off.
I lost my clients because the parents, they didn't go to work, so they decided to stay with the kids. So I lost my job that way.
Festo's childcare was one of almost 4,000 that closed in California after COVID hit. During the pandemic, the rate of childcare closures nearly tripled, on average almost 5 a day. And many of those businesses, like Festo's, have not been able to reopen.
It was very tough and very difficult for me to come back in business because, as I was saying, a lot of clients moved out of San Diego.
In many places, closures hit the most vulnerable neighborhoods the hardest. And while there was some government aid for childcare, it didn't do enough. Festo says with more money, she'd be able to build an extra room and care for kids whose parents work night shifts.
So my plan, I wanted to put one more room upstairs.
And a lot of them just couldn't make it. They didn't have a savings account they could rely on.
Kim McDougall runs the Child Care Resource Service for the San Diego YMCA. She says even a small disruption is enough to put childcare providers out of business, especially in lower income areas.
Many of our higher income communities were able to maintain their childcare supply. And that's probably because they're able to charge a higher price for the care that they're providing.
And those businesses likely had a safety net. She says during COVID, the country lost about 9% of its childcare supply, and there was already a big deficit.
Lisa, happy? Yeah. What do you think?
Ariana Steck sits at a desk in her small apartment with 4 different baby contraptions, all within arm's reach. Right now, her 6-month-old son, Griffin, is standing in a jumper surrounded by colorful buttons that play music.
I started using a family childcare home, a licensed family childcare home, for 1 day a week. And the rest of the days, I am childcare and employee.
Steck has been back at work for a month. While she put Griffin on childcare waitlists long before he was actually born, she hasn't been able to find full-time care.
Many centers didn't have vacancies until the winter of 2022. One center told me they had over 100 infants on their wait list. I was like, well, he's going to be, in preschool by the time you call us.
So she's attempting to work from home while caring for a baby.
So my very first week back, I started my days at about 4 in the morning, and he slept until 7, so I got 3 hours in then.
That wasn't sustainable. Now she gets a little more sleep and tries to work while Griffin plays.
Like tummy time, in his bedroom, we have a little footstool that I use for the rocker. I park my laptop on that, and he's sitting right next to me.
Steck actually works in part doing childcare referrals, so she has better access to childcare than almost anyone. And when she was pregnant, she knew there was a childcare crisis.
But once you're sitting in it, you're like, oh, this is a crisis. There is a legitimate thing happening here where there is a huge demand for infant care and the supply is just not there.
She says if she didn't have a flexible employer, she'd have to quit her job. Claire Trageser, KPBS News. A dozen young children sit in a circle on the sun-speckled lawn of Liberty Wynn's home childcare in Carlsbad.
We are Oasis, mighty, mighty Oasis.
After singing their school song, she dismisses them one by one to leave the circle, visit the potty, and then pick out their snacks.
Okay, how about Zayden? Z-A-D-E-N!
The idyllic scene belies the more than 2 years of turmoil Wynn has faced in the age of COVID. She was forced to close when the pandemic first hit in March of 2020. She wasn't able to reopen for 2 months.
And then within 2 weeks, we got the eviction.
Her landlord said he was moving back into the home Wynn was renting. She frantically searched for a new place where she could both live and have her childcare business. She ultimately found the building in Carlsbad. But it wasn't suitable for a daycare, so Wynn had to take out a federal emergency disaster relief loan and spend $20,000 on the property.
I had to put a lot of the loan money into this place because it's on a lake. It's lovely, it's gorgeous, but it was a huge risk.
Her lease will be up this summer, and Wynn just received more bad news. Her landlord has plans to turn the property instead into a luxury Airbnb. So Wynn is out of business again, this time permanently.
So our last day is August 26th. Oasis of San Diego will be ending.
This historically tight housing market has created a crisis on top of a crisis for childcare providers. First, the pandemic walloped the already fragile industry. State data show that 1 in 8 childcare businesses temporarily closed during the past 2 years. And now many are struggling to reopen due to staggering rental costs.
It puts the providers in a terribly vulnerable position.
Laura Cohn is a long-term early education expert.
The child care provider is totally dependent on that rental situation for their livelihood, and that moving the business would be incredibly disruptive to a lot of parents and families, as well as to the provider's business.
Without government funding to help providers, childcare availability will continue to decline, says Kim McDougall, who runs childcare for the San Diego County YMCA.
The funding mechanism for childcare is truly broken, and the way we have built our economic model is truly broken, and that's something that we really need to address going forward if we're going to solve the childcare crisis, because parents can't pay more, providers can't charge less, and it's never going to match up without public subsidy to close the gap.
A subsidy certainly would have helped win in Carlsbad. She will have to pack up or sell everything, from the art supplies and tiny tables and chairs to the aquariums holding snakes and turtles. And all of the money she put into the property will be lost.
I was so grateful to have found my calling and have a business that was flourishing, and I seemed to be in my element. So that's just the best. If I really think about it, I'm just quite vulnerable, and that's what I'm noticing.
The kids at her school and their parents will have to find new care when wind moves. Claire Trageser, KPBS News.
Money is available to help those living on the margins in North County, but so far there are no takers. Tanya Thorne tells us about the challenge to get a homeless shelter up and running.
Earlier this year, the City of Vista accepted a $1.8 million encampment resolution grant from California's Interagency Council on Homelessness. The grant is intended to help people living in encampments in the Buena Vista watershed area. Lourdes Castro Ramirez is with the state agency that provided the grant. She's been visiting the encampments that received the award and meeting with city partners. Vista was the only San Diego city to receive the grant.
I had an opportunity to meet with the city, to meet with the county sheriff's department, to meet with Exodus and the various partners that are working together to ensure that individuals that are living in encampments have access to services and ultimately are able to move into stable housing environments.
73-year-old Jim Conley currently lives in the encampment. He says while he has noticed more outreach from the city, he's lost when it comes to his status on getting housing assistance.
They came up to me and asked me a couple of questions, and I told them the truth, and the next thing I knew, I was out of the program.
Conley says he wants to get out of the encampment.
I don't want anything. All I want is a room, They could keep my money, just a room to sleep in at night. It's getting cold. And it's summer.
He shared that he gets around $700 a month for Social Security.
I get my retirement and all that, but it's just not. If they could put some place up for people, just something, pay what you can,
The City of Vista was requesting proposals for a homeless shelter, but no applications were submitted. Silvia Solis Daniels is the housing program manager for the City of Vista. She reached out to providers to understand why there was no interest.
A lot of our providers are seeing the increase in homelessness and the increased cost of addressing homelessness. And it's a challenge for our providers. So it's not just that there's not a need, it's just the growing challenges that there's not enough resources available for these providers.
She says the city has now changed gears and is looking into developing permanent supportive housing and a safe parking area. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Here are some of the most read stories this week at kpbs.org. Local COVID-19 cases are trending up as daily numbers reach their highest levels since February. One of the candidates running for San Diego County Sheriff lost a key endorsement as past comments on transgender individuals resurface. And this story from KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen on how San Diego's goal to reduce emissions is being tested in Balboa Park.
If I had to diagnose the biggest problem that our city faces, it is that we are a big city that too often acts like a small town.
That's Todd Gloria speaking at a mayoral candidate debate in 2019. Big city thinking was the central theme of his campaign, and a big part of that was making the city less dependent on cars, the city's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions.
I'm the guy who wrote the climate action plan. Now I'm running to be mayor to be the guy who implements the climate action plan.
But just how far is Gloria willing to go for that goal? Part of the answer could be on Park Boulevard in Balboa Park, where the city is preparing to replace an underground water main. After that's done and the street is resurfaced, city officials want to redesign it.
Increased safety for all road users is one of our primary goals.
Everett Hauser is a program manager in the city's transportation department. He says giving a dedicated lane to public transit on Park Boulevard would help the buses stay on time.
This area is right smack in the urban core and serves, a lot of people. It's some of the highest used bus routes in the city. So increasing that efficiency just makes transit use a more attractive option for people to get around.
A protected bike lane would make the street much safer and more accessible for people who bike, especially the most vulnerable, children, seniors, and people with disabilities.
People need to feel safe with being able to bike.
Madison Coleman is a policy advocate for the nonprofit Climate Action Campaign. On a short bike ride up and down Park Boulevard, where bikes currently share a lane with cars, it didn't take long for things to feel unsafe. A driver in a sports car zooms past us well above the posted speed limit, which is already 40 miles per hour. Coleman and other environmental advocates want the mayor to add both bus and bike lanes to Park Boulevard.
So it's really, really important for him to stand up and be the model for the region to create really safe and efficient other transportation opportunities for people to feel like they can not rely on their cars as much as they probably do right now.
Here's the catch. To add a bus and bike lane, the street would have to sacrifice a travel lane for cars and on-street parking, which is about 4% of the area's total parking. Peter Comiskey is executive director of the Balboa Park Cultural Partnership, which represents the park's attractions. He says removing parking to add bus and bike lanes will make the park less accessible.
Most of our visitors to the park, some 90% of people coming to the park, or over that on most days, would be coming in vehicles. And they're often coming in groups, very often families. Those families aren't able to use rideshare. Those are not solutions for them.
The city is studying other options that would preserve street parking at the expense of bike and transit riders. But Comiskey says he doesn't like those options either. He wants the city to finish a mobility and parking management study first.
Historically, a lot of solutions that are forced into the park are done so because they're done in a very piecemeal and reactive way, instead of having a really solid strategic approach.
Meanwhile, the city's own measurements show it's behind on switching commutes away from cars, and the bus and bike lanes on Park Boulevard can happen for virtually no additional cost to the pipeline replacement project. Again, here's Mayor Gloria speaking as a candidate in 2019.
When we have these fights about bike lanes and pedestrian improvements, this is often about a can of paint and the ability to just move forward with leadership. We have an adopted bicycle master plan that isn't always faithfully implemented. We're going to start supporting public transit and active transportation because it's critical to the future of our quality of life.
Thank you.
Whichever design the mayor selects, Park Boulevard is set to be restriped by December. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The busy summer travel season is just getting started, and so is a major project at San Diego International Airport. As a brand new terminal is built, John Carroll shows us what it means for those trying to get to and from their flights.
No pain, no gain. The phrase associated with working out also applies to what is underway at San Diego International Airport. The gain, a sparkling new Terminal 1. The pain, trying to park here over the next several years.
It is going to be a bit of a nightmare.
Airport spokesperson Sabrina Lopiccolo is simply stating the obvious. In fact, the Terminal 1 parking lot has already shrunk by about 300 spaces. That's the part behind the smiley face fence coverings, and soon it will go away altogether.
Come June 5th, we are going to have to close the Terminal 1 parking lot. And as of June 15th, the entire parking lot will be empty and turned over as a construction site. And this site specifically will be the new Terminal 1 parking structure.
Any vehicles here after June 15th will be towed, and after that, the Terminal 2 parking plaza with its 3,000 or so spaces will be it. This sky bridge will be torn down to be replaced by this crosswalk being put together now. The 55-plus-year-old Terminal 1 will be around for a while, but as you can see, crews are already working in the area, and next they'll tear down the current Airport Administration building, the old PSA headquarters for those of you who've been around here a while. A new admin building is being built. Part of the new terminal will go where the current admin building is.
Once that new terminal is open, the first 19 gates will we'll move all of the airlines over, we'll get them settled, and then the demolition of the current Terminal 1 will begin.
While the construction goes on outside, the crowds grow inside as the holiday weekend is upon us, and Sabrina Lopiccolo has some travel tips. First, plan ahead, as in plan if you want to park here.
We strongly recommend getting reservations, which can be done on our website at san.org.
MTS can get you here by bus or trolley. There's a free shuttle service from the Old Town Station. But no matter how you plan to get here, remember, construction.
It's going to take extra time to not only get to the airport, but get through security and get to the gate. So whether you're flying out of Terminal 1 or Terminal 2, just make sure that you're allowing yourself enough time, preferably about 2 hours before your flight.
And it might help to think that even with all this pain, there is gain at the end. A beautiful new state-of-the-art terminal. Another step in San Diego's journey to being a truly world-class city. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Drought and how we'll get our water in the years to come is forcing communities to plan for the future. In East County, an investment that broke ground this week is a big piece of the puzzle. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge shows us the plan to make our local water supply more sustainable.
People wearing business suits and hard hats broke ground in Santee for the East County Advanced Water Purification Plant. It's part of a plan by 4 East County water agencies to take wastewater that's now treated and dumped in the ocean and turn it into water that's clean enough to drink.
This project will create 30% of our water supply needs. It'll be sourced locally. It will not be imported from hundreds of miles away from the Colorado River Basin that is under stress, or from the Delta in Northern California. So it's significant from that standpoint. It's a local, reliable supply of water.
Water purification plants force wastewater through very fine filters. Any remaining contaminants are blasted with UV light and mixed with hydrogen peroxide. The plants are expensive. The one in East County will cost $950 million. 4 years ago, a Padre Dam Water District engineer told KPBS the estimated cost was around $460 million. But outgoing general manager of the Padre Dam District, Alan Carlisle, says things have changed.
The project has evolved, it's expanded. We've added energy recovery, we've increased the size of the project, and then of course the impact of the worldwide pandemic, supply chain issues, inflation, those have all impacted the price.
But Carlisle says there will be savings on the cost of imported water.
In other words, if we do nothing, what are we going to pay for water, and what are we going to pay for wastewater services compared to what those services will cost if we do this project?
In San Diego County, Oceanside already has made purified wastewater a part of its water supply, and a much bigger project is being planned for the city of San Diego. Devin Upadhyay is Assistant General Manager of the LA-based Metropolitan Water District. He says the East County Water Project is central to their regional goals.
We provide about half of the water that's used in Southern California. But as we've seen climate conditions change and we've seen growth patterns in the region, our board has taken a position that we need to increase self-reliance on local supplies that are developed here within the region to reduce strain on imported supplies.
Metropolitan is offering a financial incentive to East County that could cover $92 million of the cost of the plant. The vast majority of the cost, $800 million, will be covered by loans from the state and the federal government, with interest rates as low as 1%. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
We'll stay in East County for this final story, which marks 2 years since the social justice protest and riot in La Mesa. Jacob Ayer spoke with members of that community on what it means to reflect on events of that day.
On the afternoon of May 30th, 2020, people gathered in La Mesa to peacefully protest a police officer's controversial arrest of a black man at a trolley stop earlier that week. After night fell, rioting and looting broke out in the city's main business district. Pink Rose Cafe owner Nadia Zamora says hers was one of many La Mesa businesses that was damaged.
I mean, that night of the riots, we came down here to get some of the equipment out, and we were faced with rioters and looters that were literally snatching our things out of our hands. And so just seeing, it looked like a scene out of a war zone.
While much of La Mesa's downtown is fixed up from the damage it sustained, there are still reminders of what happened that night. Most obvious is the rebuilding of Union and Chase Banks, which were largely destroyed. Among the most hard-hit businesses was the Play It Again Sports and the La Mesa Springs Shopping Center. Staff member Justin Wesley says it took his store about 6 to 7 months to get up and running again.
They had to take everything out of the store. The store was flooded. Inventory, 50% of it was lost. The community came in, helped out, cleared it up, and that's when they started putting everything back together.
Zamora says the Pink Rose Cafe not only survived, but is now thriving. And she says the community has come together in ways it didn't before.
And being the only Latina business owned here on this block, I'm very proud to say that I feel very embraced by all of the merchants. I feel like we brought that awareness was brought on to La Mesa that was probably needed. Not saying that I justify anything with what happened, but it was an opportunity for the community to grow.
Zamora went on to say that the 2-year anniversary is a reminder of how the La Mesa residents supported one another and have healed together. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
We hope that you enjoy this look at KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Thanks for joining us.